In the middle of the Cold War, while the world was holding its breath, a West German shoe company did the unthinkable. It hopped over the Iron Curtain. I'm Yaroslav's sister Anya, and this is the absolutely wild story of how the three stripes became the symbol of power, rebellion, and coolness in the Soviet Union, and even elite Spetsnaz soldiers in Afghanistan. This is how Adidas, the company from the heart of capitalism, conquered the Soviet Union without firing a single shot. Our story begins with desperation, which, as many of you know, is the heart and soul of the works of Russian art. But it wasn't the loud desperation of Anna Karenina jumping onto the train tracks, but a quiet, desperate need for better footwear. A nation that could launch people into space could not seem to launch a decent running shoe of a production line. Seriously. For all its might, the Soviet Union, a superpower built on the idea of self-sufficiency, made sportswear that was reported to be heavy, clunky, and had all the aerodynamic grace of a potato without its nutritional value. For a nation that poured its identity into the athletic glory, this was an athletic wardrobe malfunction of historic proportions. Soviet ideology demanded they produce the best of everything as fast as possible, but reality, it seemed, had tripped over its own clunky, state-issued shoes. And this wasn't a new problem either. Apparently, contacts and limited cooperation with Adidas began as early as the late 1950s and 60s. The German company had a simple winning strategy: get their shoes on feet of champions. It was the best advertising money could buy. And in the Eastern Bloc, where Western goods were rarer than a capitalist with a good word for communism, it was pure gold. Rumors about Adidas officially sponsoring the Moscow Summer Olympics started circulating as early as 1972. And as early as 1972, one could spot the Dassler brand machinery at the Moscow Industrial Expo. The secret finally burst into open with the 1980 Moscow Summer Olympics. The Soviet Union was hosting, a first for a communist country, and national prestige was on the line. The athletes had to look the part, but the state-run design houses were, let's say, out of their league, unless the league was for the most uninspiring jumpsuit. So Soviet leaders made a decision that was ideologically very awkward, but practically essential. They officially turned to Adidas, a shining symbol of Western capitalism. Adidas became the official supplier for the games, but the deal came with very Soviet conditions. The Soviets wanted the gear, not the capitalist cheer. It was like ordering the burger, but asking to hold the pickles. On the athletic uniforms, the three stripes were often sneakily changed. On the shoes, however, the three stripes remained, but the Adidas name and logo were gone. Second, Adidas had to transfer all its technology and set up factories on Soviet soil. The USSR bought the license and the equipment, becoming the 20th country licensed to produce the Adidas goods. This tech transfer has exposed just how wide the gap was between East and West. A Soviet audit revealed that the country possessed only a few of the synthetic materials necessary to produce the shoes. Everything else had to be imported from the very capitalist world they criticized. While the factories produced rented Adidas shoes for export, a new shoe also began rolling off the production line. Based on the classic Adidas Gazelle, it had a blue leather upper, a unique and iconic ochre-colored sole, and those three signature white stripes. But where the heel tab would normally say Adidas, it now had a new name in Cyrillic: Moskva. A Western shoe has been reborn with a Soviet identity. It was basically Jason Bourne of sneakers. Just as the partnership was getting started, politics crashed the party and didn't even bring a birthday gift to my birthday party on my birthday. Rude. In December 1979, Soviet troops invaded Afghanistan. The United States led a massive boycott for the Moscow Games, and 65 other countries, including the Adidas' own home, West Germany, joined in. It was a huge political crisis, but the games went on. Show must go on. You don't just cancel the Olympics, the paperwork would be a nightmare. And for the millions of Soviet citizens glued to their state-run TVs, what they saw was a revelation. Their heroes, the Soviet athletes, were dominating the games, and they were all wearing the iconic three stripes. They saw the tracksuits, the shorts, and of course the shoes. Three stripes with no Adidas logo. At the time, popular folklore captured that East-West clash. Сегодня носит Adidas, а завтра родину продаст. Before the Olympics, sportswear in the USSR was strictly functional. You wore your tracksuit to the gym, and that was it. Wearing one in public was as improper as wearing a swimsuit to a board meeting. The 1980 Games flipped the script entirely, legitimizing sportswear as everyday fashion. The zipper jacket with a stand-up collar worn by the Olympic team became so iconic it got its own name in Russian, Olympiyka. Suddenly, everyone wanted the piece of Western style, even a Soviet-made version. The Moskva sneaker, despite being produced inside the USSR, became an object of national obsession. There was just one problem. The Soviet planned economy was simply not built for a sudden explosive demand. Very few of the Moscow sneakers ever made it to the regular stores. The vast majority were reserved for the athletic elite, national teams, and top-tier sports clubs, and whatever number made it to the shelves was running tragically small in sizes. Why? It was much easier to produce more pairs in smaller sizes and fulfill the gross product plan. This scarcity just made the brand even more desirable. Owning a pair of Adidas, even the Soviet-produced Moskvas, was a sign of status, connection, and even luck. People would wear them to the theater or even a nice restaurant. A massive black market sprang up. It was probably easier to get your hands on the state secrets than a pair of these sneakers. Along with Levi's jeans, the Adidas jacket became a non-negotiable item for any stylish Soviet youth. The brand wasn't about sports anymore. It was about being modern and connected to the world beyond the Iron Curtain. It was a taste of forbidden but also sweet capitalism. Stories even circulated of people modifying other types of athletic shoes to resemble the Western-style sneakers. Whether entirely true or slightly exaggerated, it shows just how powerful the desire for three stripes has become. For example, it was rumored that some kids would buy the easier-to-find cross-country ski Adidas shoes, which had a long, pointed toe, and they would literally cut the tips off to make them look like sneakers. They were horribly uncomfortable, with a sole as stiff as board, but the willingness to suffer for the look showed the raw power of three stripes. And then the story takes a turn from strange to downright bizarre. It has never happened before, and now here we go again. After the Olympics, the Soviets did not just keep the factories running. They took over the whole operation. As part of the deal, the equipment was left behind, and the Moskva shoe, the bootleg sneaker born from the state-sanctioned deal, was now fully a product of Soviet system, and it was about to get drafted like any law-abiding Soviet citizen. In the mountains of Afghanistan, Soviet soldiers were fighting a brutal and grinding war. Their standard-issue military boots, kirzachi, were about as stealthy in the mountains as me trying to get a pickle from the fridge in the middle of the night. The elite special forces, the Spetsnaz, needed something better. And instead of standard-issued boots, many improvised, turning to lightweight civilian footwear, including tennis shoes and other athletic sneakers. Quoting a 1995 US Office of Defense research report, Soviet field uniforms were unsuitable for Afghanistan. They were restrictive and uncomfortable. Soviet boots were noisy and unsuitable for mountain climbing. Instead of boots, members of elite units such as Airborne Forces or VDV and Spetsnaz improvised. Quoting the same report, when possible, commanders equipped their soldiers with tennis shoes. While the Moskva sneaker lacked ankle support, they made it up in combat effectiveness. Soviet commanders believed that publishing photographs of soldiers wearing the sneakers would reflect poorly on their unit, as if there was nothing else to reflect poorly on them. A small number of photographs show Soviet soldiers wearing non-standard footwear, including sneakers, though specific models are rarely identifiable. Ironically, the secret nature of the Moskva sneaker wearers, coupled with the voluntary press embargo, gave the shoe owners and their units prestige in and of itself. Just as you, my Western comrades, associate beards, baseball caps, and ugly glasses with the US Special Forces today, the image of soldiers wearing sneakers developed a kind of mythos and later some cultural fascination. The coolness of wearing sneakers during the war grew to the point when the model was immortalized in everything from video games to military reenactments and action figures. You can even see such reference in the 2005 movie Ninth Company, where in one famous scene you can see the division commander stepping on one of the soldiers with the iconic blue sneaker. The same shoes that stood for Olympic glory were now being worn by Soviet forces fighting the Mujahideen. This is a mad crossover, to be honest. Rambo could have seen the Moskva sneaker, a symbol of Western consumerism, had become a tool of Soviet military might, which is a plot twist so wild, Hollywood would have rejected it for being too unrealistic. When the Soviet Union finally collapsed in 1991, the floodgates burst open. The scarcity that made Adidas so cool vanished overnight. The brand flooded the Russian market, mostly in form of cheap knockoffs from China and Turkey. As the country spiraled in the chaotic 1990s, the meaning of three stripes twisted once again. Now, more often than not, you would see Abibas, Adibas, Adidas, or even Adidas. Now, the tracksuit, once the uniform of the champions, became the uniform of the streets, particularly tied to Russia's new criminal subcultures. How? Well, some former athletes, left without state support after the collapse, found work in the emerging criminal structures. It was a grim career change, but at least dress code was comfy. They just kept wearing what they knew, their Adidas tracksuit. At the same time, the brand's coolness attracted anyone looking for status, from small-time criminals to shady entrepreneurs. The Adidas tracksuit became the go-to uniform for a working-class street subculture known as the gopniks, known for squatting on their heels, chewing the sunflower seeds, and a generally aggressive vibe. The gopnik in the three-striped tracksuit became a lasting and often intimidating, but also familiar to all of you, my comrade viewers, stereotype of post-Soviet Russia. And through it all, Adidas has endured. Its meaning has been twisted and distorted more times than a pretzel at an Oktoberfest. It's been a symbol of athletic perfection, a whiff of Western freedom, a tool of war, and the uniform of the criminal underworld. It's seen more action than some secret agents. Today, its place in the culture is even more complex. The look had a massive revival with the wildly popular 2023 Russian TV series Slovo Patsana, which glamorized the late 80s street gang aesthetics, sending a new generation scrambling for the three-stripe look. When Russian designer Gosha Rubchinsky launched the collaboration with Adidas in 2017, it was recognized by many as something deeply and authentically Russian. The brand is no longer just a foreign object of desire. It is woven into the national psyche, right alongside nesting dolls and the healthy suspicion of everything. And even now, with the brand having officially pulled out of Russia due to sanctions, because of war, dedicated fans still find ways to get their hands on it through parallel imports and other means, proving that an obsession is very hard to kill. It's a quiet testament to the times where the three stripes meant the world, and a powerful story of how a product can become a mirror reflecting nations' wildest hopes, fears, and transformations. So, you've watched my video, you've consumed my labor. Now you have two choices: like and subscribe, or wear knockoff Adidas for the rest of your life. And everyone will know. I will make sure of it.